Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Rinaldo. I am the president of Istituto Veneto of Science, Letters and Arts. On its behalf, I'm welcoming the Alma Foundation and all the hosts, the hosts and the students for this important activity, for we care very much about its activities. Besides the great privilege, in fact, to join the Alma Foundation in its very worthwhile endeavors, and so I welcome you all. I'm assigned 10 minutes to introduce somewhat to the reason why, in fact, the Institute is in fact coordinating and fostering activities relating to the city of Venice. The Institute was Napoleon established roughly 200 years ago, and the Institute has had through the centuries a keen interest in the safeguarding of a city, of a built environment, and its natural environment, that is the lagoon and its ecosystem, to the point that figure that during the 19th century, Institute Veneto organized like 32 competitions, like prizes of science or of innovation, and with the main focus, in fact, strictly centered on the well-being of the city and the lagoon. So the relentless focusing of safeguarding is what suggests that we should be at the forefront, in fact, of some rethinking, which, as I'll be telling you, and as Professor Musso will tell you in a short while, and there's something which will be called to consider and reason about the future of the city again. One of the main things that we need to keep in mind is that there is a widespread idea in the public imagination that there exists something nearly close to what you would call a natural equilibrium that would have presided the evolution of the environment surrounding the city of Venice and its evolutionary features. Yet this is it's a foolish concept. Lagoons are metastable states between regressions and transgressions of sea level rise. They've been changing completely, and in fact, the lagoon of Venice is no exception. It would have disappeared like 300 to 400 years ago by the very processes that had originally determined the natural formation of a lagoon and its connections to the sea. Figure that in the 14th century, we counted hundreds of lagoons in the northern Adriatic, all of them to disappear and to become a branch of sea, depending on the various vagaries of climatic change, except two, Grado and Venezia, and for the very reason that man decided to keep them and manipulated and completely transformed the directions of a spontaneous evolution that you had into place. Why are we concerned now about what's going to happen to Venice? Because it was opened with the IPCC report, the regional studies, licensed and distributed in 2023, that sound really like a death knell to the future of a city, because the projections that we are able to put forward on the scenarios for sea level rise are telling us that within a century, we'll have a problem that, unless tackled earlier than that, would be irresolvable. And somewhat, either the politics of a public consciousness rely on the idea that the system of barriers, the mosaic, that had been with Marx since about 50 years of labor, of major discussions, of hatred, of different opinions that split really the public opinion in the city. And I'm a witness to that because I was born and raised in Venice, so I was very much in the middle of it. And the sense that I would like to convey is that at the time of the mosaic, it is the design of systems that will protect the city from storm surges of exceptional nature that had created the idea that unless we intervened at the time, we would have lost the city to the rolling waves, to the pounding waves on the structure of the city. Now, that is in place, but the mosaic is not the solution for the chronic problem that is suggested by what we see now as the mountain waters, that is sea level rise. But for a number of reasons, the MOSE is not the solution. It was designed for something completely else. And what is the real problem that we have is that if with a meter more sea level rise, which is a reasonable projection, it's not the most catastrophic one, in fact, it's a reasonable assumption, in fact, that you have, that by the end of the century, you're going to have a relative sea level rise of the order of a meter, which is a compound effect, the combined action of eustatism, that is the proper sea level rise, and subsidence of a platform over which the city of Venice sits. And whether or not it's a meter more, it's a meter plus or minus 10 centimeters is completely irrelevant, because it's just a matter of timing or when this will happen, because climatic change is not something we have to see and whether it happens. It has already happened. And the thermal inertia of the system will tell you that even if we stopped to pour in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere now, highly unlikely to impossible, in fact, still the inertia of the atmosphere will have to have the thermal expansion that will generate the sea level rise for about a century. So long story short, decade plus, decade minus, I don't care, by the end of the century, you're going to have a meter more of sea level rise. I say, well, do we have the MOSE? It's our solution. The answer is no, for a number of reasons. MOSE, with the meter more of sea level rise, with the current rules, will have to be closed 260, on average, 260 times a year, which is impossible to do from the maintenance of a structure viewpoint. And not only that, even if it were possible, it means that the lagoon completely closed and you destroy the lagoon as a transition ecosystem. At the same time, you would have to realize that no maritime activity would be possible in the lagoon. Whether or not you like it, it's something on which for 1,000 years, in fact, that built the strength, the innovation, the capability of the Republic of Venice, to survive through centuries, in fact. And the reason why no maritime activity with them, because no maritime company, shipping company, would rely on a system which is almost permanently closed. And third and foremost, the city will rot away, because once you have capillary rise into a city, into buildings, even 300 years old, that have never seen this level of water, it would mean that you would have essentially evaporating salt water, means that the salt is left behind. So in the end, the city will rot away. So what about a chance for thinking whether or not to do? Can you think of a thriving city with the control of sea level rise? That's something where we have to start making a serious assumptions and serious guesses on that. And on this, there's something of a move. And I have to tell you that in reality, Istituto Veneto, it's at the forefront of the efforts to launch an international consultation in the fashion of the urbanists, in fact, for calling the world and different groups from the worldwide to see whether we have some idea, in fact, on how to have consider a thriving city 100 years from now, that is with a meter more sea level rise. Which is also a great occasion, because maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I certainly don't. And I have to say that Venice right now, it's some sort of a theme park, essentially a city with less than 40,000 residents and more than 32 million visitors a year. So whatever you see surrounding you, it's the aggressive disappearance, in fact, of what characterizes a full-fledged city, in fact. And it's a theme park in a sense. Somebody asked a guide, in fact, at the end, what time would Venice close tonight? It's not a city anymore. So it's time to rethink all of that. So with that in mind, I'm really hopeful that you will enjoy your stay in Palazzo Franchetti as our host. And with that in mind, I really wish to be Alma Dal Foundation's activities in this case and in the future, the best of luck. Thank you so much.